Good morning and welcome to day 2 of the Horizon flight. I'm Charlie Chafer here from Celestis World Headquarters in Houston, and we're happy so many of you persevered and are back for today's launch attempt. I am reminded of 6 words one of my favorite artists wrote. Tom Petty said, "The waiting is the hardest part." Well, hopefully we're through most of the waiting and we're ready to have a successful mission this morning. And to kick us off, let's go live to Cape Canaveral and check in from Ryan near the launch pad.
Ryan, you were muted.
Thank you very much. Sorry about that. Yeah, we are live here from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, and we're about 3 miles away. And this is a pretty remarkable place. We've watched a lot of missions launch from here, a lot of different satellites, a lot of important science missions. But this mission feels really special. I had a chance to learn about some of your loved ones through the stories that you've submitted. And I'm excited to be here with you as we launch into space. We've got a lot of cameras in place here. I've got a big camera right here to my left. We have remote cameras placed at the launch pad. And in a few minutes, we're going to be switching after a brief discussion to a side-by-side view with the SpaceX live stream. So hopefully with our cameras here and SpaceX's up-close view, we'll have a very beautiful view of liftoff. We're still on track for a 10 a.m. liftoff time. And as you can see, the skies are a little bit clearer today. So our fingers are still crossed, and we'll be learning more from SpaceX soon. So back to you, Charlie.
Thanks, Ryan. Looking good down there. We're fortunate again to have the same lineup that we had yesterday of guests who've sacrificed their Sunday mornings for you and agreed to join us and provide some thoughts and insights as we go through what we hope is a very successful morning. So I won't spend any more time. I think I've introduced everyone yesterday. We'll begin with 2-time astronaut, full-time artist and earthling, Nicole Stott.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Charlie. And thanks, Ryan, for the view out at the Cape. I'm about 150 miles west of you over here in St. Petersburg, Florida. And we've got kind of the same cloud cover and very, very good feeling about the weather. I was thinking, and we talked a little bit about this yesterday, as the weather called it, these scrubs that we have, it's interesting. We've got ourselves worked up. We're ready for the launch. And then there are things like weather that can make us have to wait. And that's true with astronauts strapping in at the launch pad too. I remember my first flight a little bit before 4 o'clock in the morning, and we were all in. And the last thing I heard as they were getting ready to close the hatch was that weather warning, like phase, whatever, lightning warning in effect. And we did not go that night. But we did finally go. And I'll tell you, as you're strapped in there, as I'm sure I get this sense, I just always, because my daughter was in the place of your loved one as well. And my hope was that she was feeling and that they'll be feeling that same sense that we did strapped in at the pad, and that this anxiousness is there, not just for what it's going to feel like to launch and get to space, but the liberation that comes to you just when you get to release yourself. And I will imagine that happening as they're all released into space and will be sent orbiting this planet for years to come, to appreciate the gift that you've given them, the glowing, translucent, iridescent, spectacular view of Earth that they will experience. And the same for you as their families, as you plant your feet in the ground and look up towards space and watch them know that they are there with you, circling the planet, and that they'll continue to be with you for the rest of your lives. So very anxious to get to that 10-9-8 point today. and to feel it, to not just feel it as we watch it, but to feel it inside our souls and our hearts and minds as we think about your loved ones heading to the stars. So thanks again for having me back.
Thank you, ma'am. Next up, Christina Rasmussen, who's going to talk to you a little bit about your feelings as loved ones, as viewers, as actual key members of today's mission. Christina?
Thanks, Charlie. And I am so happy to be here again with you today and honored to spend my Sunday morning with all of you. And today I am going to use the couple of minutes I have with you to talk about this moment as the most heartfelt farewell. You will always remember this day. No matter how many years go by, your mind and your heart will be able to bring back this day in every detail, as if it just happened, as if it just happened yesterday. 10 years, 15 years ahead, this day will remain very close to you and in the present moment. So I want to make sure we find a little bit of time to talk to our loved ones. You see, when we lose someone we love, we feel that we can't communicate with them anymore because they're not physically here, and you feel this sense of longing. That longing will never go away, but the fact that we cannot communicate, that is simply not true. We actually never ever lose connection with them. We just have to enter what I think is a new kind of relationship and a new way to communicate. So today, and right this moment, it is the perfect time to just allocate a few seconds and say a few words to them to prepare them for this mission. Tell them where they're going and how excited you are to take them there. Prepare them for this launch. I deeply, deeply believe love never, ever dies. Never, 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 ever. And I'm going to keep saying this to all of you. Love never dies. It just transcends this physical world. The love you shared will travel up there with them and will stay there, always connected to them. And in that very same way, their love for you will always be part of your life. And you will feel that. And I feel that love. My husband died 14 years ago. And no day goes by without that feeling of love. You see, this launch is such a very special farewell, one they're so very grateful for. And remember, when you feel grief, when you feel that grief, and you will, after today, and the many years to come, grief is just love, without the physical connection. Charlie, back to you.
Thank you, Christina. Frank, you get the anchor leg again this morning, and we'll turn it over to you now.
Oh, thank you so much, Charlie. I just have to say, once again, I'm honored to be with you and with Christina and Brian and Nicole and with the families. And as you know, I signed on early today. It's no sacrifice at all. It's just quite a privilege to be with you for this very, very special event. As I was thinking after the scrub yesterday, what I might say today, in addition to yesterday's comments, I thought of three different aspects to emphasize. First of all, we talk a lot about why we put time, energy, and effort into space exploration, and we often talk about science and other benefits. But one thing I'd like to mention is creativity. You have done something here with Celestis that is really an incredibly creative way of honoring loved ones who have passed. It's very creative, and it's something that simply could not have happened prior to having the opportunity of spaceflight. So that is one of the aspects I'd like to emphasize. Another one is the fact that it never could have happened without the technology we have today Space is actually quite close. The space environment is quite close. It's as close as it was 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago for our ancestors. And even if someone had really wanted to do something like this, and we have been memorializing our loved ones for all of those years, they simply couldn't have done it until now. So what is happening today is quite special, and what Celestis is doing is really quite special. And it also just reminds us of the fact that we really are in space. That is really the environment we're in. We just typically don't think about it because, again, until the last decade or more, it's just been inaccessible to us because of cost and technology. And the final thing I want to say is, based on what some astronauts have told me, they have said they really feel at home in that environment, which is interesting because that environment is really not designed for human beings. And it's a bit of a mystery to be explored as to why human beings feel comfortable there. But the fact that they feel at home reminds me again of continuity, which is that quite often in the past in celebrations like this, people have talked about their loved ones going home. So I hope the families today will just tune into a different and perhaps very creative way of considering that their loved ones are going home to the universe of which we are all part. One of the astronauts I interviewed, Al Sacco, said, "We are truly citizens of the universe," which I completely believe. And as I mentioned yesterday, of course, one of the unique aspects of this journey is the outpouring of love of the families for their loved ones as they take this journey. So once again, Charlie, thank you for inviting me here. Thanks to all the families and to everyone who's putting this broadcast together. It is really wonderful and an honor to be here again. Thanks again.
Well, we appreciate you very much, Frank. And we're as little as 2 minutes away from going live with SpaceX. We'll stand by and be ready to go live as soon as the web stream starts. The group will be back shortly after SECO, which is Space Talk for second engine cutoff, I believe. At least that makes sense to me. We'll then be in orbit. We will then know that your loved ones will have achieved orbital spaceflight. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. We see that SpaceX is counting down to their launch. So let's just go and look at the launch on the pad and wait for SpaceX to come live. Good luck, everyone. Godspeed.
LWO1 WeatherNet. Liftoff conditions looking pretty good.
ESPS is ready for launch. Ignition. Liftoff.
Falcon 9 has cleared the tower.
Ten, 9, 8,
Side booster ignition.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good morning. It's Sunday, January 24th, and we're here at SpaceX's headquarters in Hawthorne, California. You're looking at a live view of Falcon 9 as it awaits its 10 a.m. Eastern Time launch from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. My name is Andy Tran, and I'm a production supervisor here at SpaceX. Welcome to the webcast for SpaceX's Transporter-1 mission. It's our first dedicated small-sat rideshare program launch and third launch of 2021. If you joined us yesterday, you know we scrubbed for weather, specifically for the surface electricity field rule. Today's weather has also been a bit challenging, but we're currently looking good for our T0 liftoff time. On board this mission are 133 commercial and government spacecraft, in addition to 10 Starlink satellites, the most spacecraft ever deployed on a single mission. This count includes CubeSats, microsats, and 2 orbital transfer vehicles, sometimes called space tugs, which will deploy their spacecraft after separating from Falcon 9. SpaceX created the SmallSat rideshare program to provide small satellite operators with competitive pricing, increased flight opportunities, flexibility, and most importantly, a ride to space on SpaceX's Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy, as well as Starship in the not-too-distant future. For more details on our rideshare program or to reserve your spot, head over to our website at spacex.com/rideshare. Now let's take a look at Falcon 9 out on the pad at the Cape. You're looking at a live view of Falcon 9, our 70-meter, 2-stage liquid fueled launch vehicle. Today's mission is the 5th flight for this particular booster. Its first 4 flights were all in 2020, which included our Crew Dragon Demo 2 mission for NASA in May, the Anasis 2 mission in July, a Starlink mission in October, and most recently, CRS-21 in December. You can tell by the re-entry soot at the bottom of the vehicle that this booster has flown before. That bottom 2/3 of the vehicle is the first stage. Its objective is to accelerate the vehicle through the Earth's atmosphere into space and then separate from the rest of the rocket. From there, it will make its way back to Earth and target a landing on a recovery vessel. Of course, I Still Love You. There she is on screen. On top of the first stage is the black carbon fiber inner stage. This composite material houses the larger nozzle of the second stage engine. And then on top of the inner stage is the Falcon 9 second stage, which will take the payload to its eventual destination in orbit. After the first stage separates about 2.5 minutes into flight, the second stage will then carry the 143 spacecraft to orbit. In order to get to the intended orbit today, we'll need to light our second stage twice before deploying all of our payloads. And at the top of the rocket, you'll notice a large nose cone. This is called the fairing. It's a composite structure and protects the rocket from the forces of ascent and also houses our payloads. Once the vehicle is outside of the Earth's atmosphere, the fairing separates to expose the satellites to space. For today's mission, both fairings halves are brand new, and our recovery vessel, Miss Chief, will be attempting to recover the fairing halves from the water following landing. And finally, the large truss structure next to Falcon 9 is called the Transporter Erector. We also refer to it as the TE. Its job is to roll Falcon 9 out to the launch pad, raise it to a vertical launch position, and also route power, fluids, and communication to the rocket and satellite. It will retract away from the rocket slightly around the T-minus 4.5 minute mark, providing clearance for Falcon 9 to lift off. The chief engineer held a technical poll at the T-minus 1 hour mark, and the launch director held a propellant load and launch go-no-go poll at the T-minus 38 minute mark. Weather is still tracking to be green for a T0 liftoff. Falcon 9 has been loading propellants since the T-minus 35 minute mark. The vehicle uses a refined form of kerosene called RP1 for its fuel and super chilled liquid oxygen, or LOX, as its oxidizer. Currently, RP1 is fully loaded on the second stage and nearly fully loaded on the first stage. Liquid oxygen is currently loading and currently underway on both stages. As for helium, it began loading before the webcast went live and will continue to top off until about a minute and a half before launch. We use helium as a pressurant as the propellants are pulled out by the engine pumps. In about a minute, around T-minus 7 minutes, engine chilling will begin. This is where we allow a small amount of super chilled liquid oxygen to flow into the Merlin engine turbo pumps prior to the full flow of LOX to avoid any thermal shocks to the system. Checkouts of the second stage thrust vector control actuators will also be underway. This is known as the engine wiggle test. We move the thrust chamber slightly to make sure that the guidance hardware is a go for flight. The first stage actually does the same test, but it happens just seconds before ignition. So far, the vehicle is healthy. We are currently working no issues. The range is standing by and currently green for launch. And again, weather is a tracking item, but right now we are green for T0 liftoff time. We are currently 7 minutes from liftoff. Falcon 9 is now moving into the final stages of the countdown. In about 2 minutes, the transport erector will start to retract away and enter its pre-launch position about 2 degrees from the rocket. At liftoff, hydraulics will move it to a position about 45 degrees away from the rocket. Again, around the T-minus 4.5 minute mark, you'll hear some hiss and pop, and that's pressure venting from the rocket and the plumbing of the transporter erector. The vehicle remains in good health. We're continuing to load propellant on both the first and second stages. You can see that we've had some gaseous oxygen venting from Falcon 9. About a minute before liftoff, you'll hear the announcement that Falcon 9 is in startup, which means that the rocket's own internal flight computers are now autonomously controlling the launch countdown. The payload inside the fairing halves continue to be healthy. The Falcon 9 team is tracking no issues on the rocket. Weather, again, is a tracking item for us, but currently we're green. And as a reminder, if we don't launch today, we'll make another attempt sometime in the future, and we'll let you know as soon as we know that date. And as I mentioned earlier, today's launch is the first of SpaceX's dedicated smallsat rideshare program, which provides small satellite operators with competitive pricing and increased flight opportunities on board the world's most advanced and proven launch vehicles. As part of the program, we also offer traditional rideshare opportunities on existing low Earth orbit missions and on SpaceX's Starlink missions, which launch about once a month. Traditionally, it's pretty hard to find affordable space on a rocket for a small satellite. Our rideshare program groups small sats together, making it easier to purchase a less expensive ticket to orbit on a predictable schedule. And unlike traditional rideshare opportunities, our rideshare missions are not dependent on a primary payload. Our missions are pre-scheduled and will not be held up by delays with co-passengers. So that means that if you're ready to fly during the scheduled launch period, you will fly. Since we announced the program, we have launched 4 rideshare missions, including 2 Starlink missions with Planet on board, 1 Starlink mission with Spaceflight riding along, as well as the SAOCOM 1B mission. And in fact, one of these customers flew less than 6 months after their contract with SpaceX, which is a pretty remarkable turnaround time. We're really excited for today's mission, not only because it's the first dedicated rideshare, but because it will also be the most spacecraft ever deployed on a single mission. As I mentioned earlier, in addition to the more than 130 small satellites on board for our commercial and government customers, we have 10 Starlink satellites of our own riding along. And as many of you may know, Starlink is a constellation of satellites that can provide high-speed, low-latency internet all over the globe, particularly in remote or rural areas where connectivity is limited or completely unavailable. The 10 Starlink satellites launching aboard this mission will also be the first Starlink satellites deployed to a polar orbit, and many of the future Starlink sats flying to the polar orbit will actually launch from our Vandenberg site here in California. The Vandenberg team is hiring for a number of open positions to support our growing operations there. If you're interested in working on the launch team that will help all kinds of payloads launch from our West Coast facility, head over to spacex.com/careers and apply. We are about 3 minutes from liftoff. Falcon 9 is moving into the final stages of the countdown. The payload and vehicle remain healthy, and we're still currently tracking weather to be green for a T0 liftoff at 10 a.m. Eastern. In about 30 seconds, around the T-minus 2 minute mark, we should finish liquid oxygen loading, and that will wrap up the final propellant loading for Falcon 9. For those just joining us, this is the Transporter-1 mission for SpaceX, the third launch of 2021, and the first dedicated small-sat rideshare mission for SpaceX. And we just heard the call that LOX loading is completed. Again, that is the last of propellant loading for Falcon 9. And on screen, you can start to see some white clouds forming around Falcon 9. That is normal and expected for us at this stage in the countdown. That is liquid oxygen condensing as it meets the warmer ambient temperatures of the Florida air.
Falcon 9's in startup.
And the vehicle is in startup. Both stages are beginning to pressurize for launch. In a few seconds here, we should be hearing the launch director give the final go for liftoff.
LD on countdown 1, go for launch.
And there you heard it. That is the final go for launch at T-minus 35 seconds. All systems are go for the Transporter-1 mission. Let's listen and watch in as we lift off from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida.
T-minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition and liftoff.
Impulse pitching downrange.
Stage 1 chamber pressure is nominal.
We are T plus 43 seconds into flight. Falcon 9 has cleared the tower and is currently throttling down to prepare for max Q at around the T plus 1 minute and 12 second mark. Max Q is where the vehicle will experience the highest amount of aerodynamic pressures.
Falcon 9 is supersonic. Max Q.
And we've just passed max Q. That is a really cool tracking shot of Falcon 9. All is looking good with the stage 1 trajectory. In about a minute, we have 3 events coming up in quick succession. First up is main engine cutoff. That's where the 9 engines on the first stage will shut off, followed by stage separation, where the first and second stages will separate from one another. Shortly after that, we'll have second engine start 1. The Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage will ignite its engine and continue its journey into orbit.
MVAC engine chill has begun.
We're about 20 seconds away from main engine cutoff, the start of those 3 events happening in rapid succession.
Main engine cutoff.
Stage separation confirmed.
Coming up in a few seconds, we should have the fairing deploy.
MVAC ignition.
Bearing separation confirmed.
And there you can see the 2 fairing halves have separated and fallen away from the vehicle, exposing the 143 spacecraft to the vacuum of space. And as a reminder, our recovery vessel, Miss Chief, will be attempting to recover the fairing halves today from the water. We're at T plus 3 minutes and 30 seconds into flight. We have a couple of views on screen right now. On the right-hand side is a view of the second stage, specifically the MVAC engine. It's currently in the first of its 2 MVAC burns. This burn should last for about another 5 minutes or so. And on the left-hand side of your screen is a view from the top of our first stage looking down. The next milestone for the first stage will be its re-entry burn. Falcon 9 needs to execute an entry burn to slow itself down before hitting the dense parts of the atmosphere. Without this burn, relying on the atmosphere alone to slow Falcon 9 down will put unnecessary strain on the rocket. And that entry burn is coming up at around the T plus 7 minute and 47 minute mark, just a few minutes from now. For those just joining us, this is the Transporter 1 mission for SpaceX, the first dedicated small-sat rideshare program mission, and it's also the 3rd mission of 2021. We're just waiting on the next major event for this mission, which is the first stage entry burn. That's going to be happening around the T plus 7 minute and 47 mark. You can see some periodic bursts of gas from the first stage. That is nitrogen from our attitude control systems. They help to orient the first stage as it continues to make its descent back towards Earth. And as we get closer to the Earth, you'll start to notice those honeycomb-like structures on the left-hand side of your screen start to move and pivot. Those are our hypersonic grid fins, and those help to steer the first stage back as it returns back to Earth. As for the second stage, impact performance looks nominal. Just a few seconds after we finish the stage 1 burn, we'll be shutting off the second stage Merlin vacuum engine and enter a small coast phase. Again, we'll need to relight this engine later on in the mission to get to our eventual destination in orbit.
Stage 1 FTS is saved.
We are about 45 seconds away from that stage 1 entry burn. For the entry burn, it is a 3-engine burn, so 3 of the 9 Merlin engines on the first stage will relight and start to slow the stage down before it hits the denser parts of the Earth's atmosphere.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
And there's the entry burn. 3 of the 9 Merlin engines have relit. This burn is expected to last for about 30 seconds.
Second stage and terminal guidance.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
And you can see on screen the entry burn has concluded, and in just a few seconds we should be hearing the call out for a second engine cutoff, where we'll shut down the second stage MVAC engine.
FTS is saved.
There's the second stage.
Also signal stage 1, Cape expected.
The second stage has shut down its engine. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we are going to be attempting to recover the booster for a 5th time.
No parking orbit insertion.
On our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You. The first stage has one more burn left, the landing burn, and it begins just before we touch down and provides the booster with a soft descent before we land. That should be starting up anytime now. And we did get confirmation of the second stage that it did reach a good parking orbit.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy.
LOS stage 2, Cape Canaveral expected.
And Falcon 9 returns safely once again. That is the 5th time for this particular booster and the 73rd recovery of an orbital class rocket. Great way to start off the mission and a great way to start off the Sunday. We're now going to coast for the next 45 minutes or so while we wait for SES-2, or second engine start number 2. We're going to leave you with an animation that shows you where we're at in the coast phase, and we'll see you back here at the T+ 54 minute mark.
Well, there we go. We made it to orbit, and everything is looking good and wonderful. And congratulations to SpaceX, Spaceflight, Celestis, and all of the families who have waited patiently to achieve their loved one's final goal. We are in orbit. There's still plenty of activities ahead. I remind you that we are on the Sherpa FX-1 spacecraft, part of, I believe, around 25 satellites on it. It'll be deployed at about the 74-minute mark, and I anticipate that you'll be able to see that, assuming the cameras are working. if you stick with the SpaceX webcast, which of course we will do and we'll continue to broadcast it. So that's 17 missions now for Celestis. And one of the things that I've learned over the years is that probably the most important element of success is often perseverance. And for all of us, including the family members who've persevered to get to this point, a hearty well done is in order. So I'd like to do a roundtable now with our experts and just get their reactions to today's mission. And we'll flip it a little bit this time, and we'll start with Frank White. Frank?
Well, thank you, Charlie. I have seen 2 launches of the space shuttle on site, which was an amazing experience in itself. And what I felt then, I felt today. I'm so inspired by what human beings can do to achieve such a complicated outcome as a launch. And of course, today, SpaceX made it clear it was unique in and of itself. And it's what we can do as human beings when we come together. And it is serving so many different purposes, including the Celestis launch. I will say a second thing about it. I've also watched quite a few launches on YouTube, as well as those 2 where I was physically present. I never felt more connected to a launch than today. I never felt more involved. I never felt more concerned that this complex outcome would take place. And of course, that's because of all the families who are watching or who are actually there. And as you say, they have persevered to make this happen for their loved ones. And I think all of us on the panel were just hoping and praying that we would make it this time. Weather would not be a problem, and it wasn't. And I'm just so happy for the families right now. And again, so appreciative that I could be a part of it.
Thank you, Frank. We're thrilled that you were able to join us. And as you continue to advocate, think about, and write about humanity's expansion, extension throughout the cosmos, we'll be following you closely. And thanks again.
Great.
Christina, your turn. I think you're on mute, Christina.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Charlie. I started saying what an emotional experience this was. I was tearing up the whole time, just knowing the love and the feelings that everyone was feeling. I want to leave everyone with a thought about this experience. This is actually a healing experience. What Charlie has created for all of you, this space flight with your loved ones going to space is going to be a healing experience. And I'm going to ask you to share it with as many people as possible. Share it with your family members, share it with the other families, talk about it with the other families that have been a part of this launch and this mission. You're all connected together. You have this special bond now that you experience this moment in time together. It is so important to talk about the details of how you felt, the uniqueness of your feelings. Everything about it has to be expressed. And as you go forward in your life, know that there will be hard days, but after the hard days, there will always be good days, and remind yourself of that. I look forward to crossing paths with all of you one day. take care of yourself in the next 24 hours, even more so, because the emotions and the feelings you have will be intense. Really, a lot of self-care and a lot of love for yourself and for getting you through to this spectacular and profound experience today. Thank you all, and Charlie, back to you.
Thank you, Christina. And as we've discussed, one of the unique and compelling aspects, I think, of Celestis is the combination of the science and technology and engineering of spaceflight with the human touch of memorialization and remembrance of loved ones lost. And Christina, I think you tied that together perfectly for us during your days with us, and we very much appreciate your presence here among us. And now to the only one among us who has actually been there and who I know we are all waiting to hear from. Take it away, Nicole.
Well, thanks again. In my friends here, the words that they've said, I think, and Charlie, what you just closed with Christina on too, is this idea of humanity and connection. I can tell you that's what when you are in space, I mean, we all are, but when you are looking back at Earth and appreciating that view from a new perspective, a very special vantage point, there's nothing more overwhelming besides the beauty of it. But there's nothing more overwhelming than this like really intense sense of interconnectivity, of understanding that, that there's not an us and them. It is one planet or one shared home. And it all comes down to the people again. I mean, the way we share things, the connection of it. And that's what I like to think is we understand by going through something like this, our connection. And then I think there's a need to understand the interconnectivity of it all too. It's a subtle thing, but I think by what our families here have shared today is exactly what Christina and Frank were talking about too, is that there is a oneness to this, whether we knew it before or not. An experience like this really brings that to light, I think. I felt like I always do when I watch one of these launches, as we were in that 10-9-8, just like when I was strapped in, the goosebumps come up, the adrenaline starts to go, and you are anxious for I will say for the people that on board these missions to reach, to ascend and reach space. I feel joy in that. And I can tell you, like you all experienced, it is much more difficult for the family member to watch somebody that they love launch into space than it is to be the person strapped in doing it. So I am in awe of your strength and hopefully the joy that you're feeling today. I want to thank Charlie for including me. Charlie and Frank and Christina and I have connections for different reasons, but I think, again, it all comes down to this sense of who and where we are together on this planet and space. And the complexity of it all was mentioned. The idea that we can memorialize our family members by sending them into space, by providing them with a space flight to circle our planet and be there with us this way is incredible. It is complex. And yet, in all of that, what does it come down to? Like the three lessons that I learned from space. Frank hears this over and over again from me, and I'm so grateful to him for listening to me say it, because he helped open my eyes to how I could express this too, through the way he has communicated. And that's, in all that complexity, it really came down to me to three simple lessons of, and we all learned them in kindergarten. And like Frank said, we sometimes don't consider it in our daily lives, but I think that you will now, if you haven't already, is that we live on a planet and we are all Earthlings. And the only border that matters is that thin blue line of atmosphere that blankets and protects us all. And so I am very thankful. As I've said, it was an honor to be here with all of you to share these last couple days as we prepared and then sent your loved ones to space. And I am thankful for that opportunity. So take good care. Thanks, Charlie.
Beautiful words, well said, Nicole. Thank you so much for sharing them with us. All of our guests these last few days, the memorial service, attempt one, launch, really expressed or gave their all to express what we all here at Celestis feel for the folks that choose our service and their families. And I have a lot of words, but I don't have nearly the good words that we heard from those three guests. So thanks again very much for joining us. So it ain't over yet. We are in orbit. We have, if you will, completed our commitment to you, but we're going the extra mile, of course. The next time you'll hear from me, hopefully we'll get it done, is right before the Sherpa spacecraft deploys from the mothership, from the second stage of Falcon 9. We'll try to call that out. It should be on the webcast, assuming all goes well. And we'll let you know, just FYI, that's scheduled for L plus 74 minutes. So when the count comes back on, you'll be able to track it. And they're usually quite good at getting to that point, but we'll let you know in advance if we're able, which we should be, to when that's happening. And then, of course, after that's deployed, we'll have some closing words for you. But even then, our work is not over for you. We'll go to work, probably won't get to it until tomorrow, figuring out how to track Sherpa and make sure that it's on our website. It's a unique challenge for the tracking agencies because they have 143 satellites to figure out which one is which. Not like the normal launches where it's 2 or 3 spacecraft and they know fairly instantaneously which one is which and where it is. But we will, as soon as the tracking agencies figure all that out and let us know, we'll post on our tracking site on Celestis.com the daily progress, the minute-by-minute progress of the Horizon flight. And of course, soon you'll receive, those of you who are family members, primary contacts, you'll receive our video that's put together by Cosmic Perspective that will highlight and summarize the events of the mission. But all of you all are now part of the Celestis family, which is ever growing, 17 missions worth. We got 2 more scheduled for this year and more after that. So we're thrilled that you chose us. We're super thrilled that we were able to provide the service in conjunction with our partners. And for now, we'll sign off. What you'll see going forward will be the SpaceX animated webcast until they go back live, as well as our tribute to the loved ones on board. Again, thank you for joining us, and we'll be back with you soon.
Welcome back to the Transporter 1 mission. If you're just joining us, Falcon 9 lifted off at 10 a.m. Eastern from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, had successful stage separation. We landed our first stage on our drone ship for the 5th time and successfully completed our first second stage burn. On screen right now is a view of the second stage MVAC engine. We are waiting to relight that engine for the second and final burn. This burn will be a quick one, lasting only 2 seconds. And we're expecting that burn to start in just a few seconds here. And if we don't have footage of it, we should be able to get confirmation over the nets. And there is second engine startup and then cut off. Now we're waiting for confirmation of a good orbit on that second stage.
Nominal payload orbit insertion.
And there's the call out that we want. That is a confirmation of a good orbit. Next up will be the deployment of our 133 spacecraft on board the mission, which will occur over an 18-minute period. And as a reminder, today's mission is the first dedicated small-sat rideshare program mission. We created this program to provide small satellite operators with regularly scheduled rides on board Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy, and in the not-too-distant future, Starship as well. These missions offer competitive pricing to our customers, as well as increased flight opportunities and flexibility. As part of this program, we're also offering traditional rideshare opportunities on existing low Earth orbit missions and on SpaceX's Starlink missions, which provide launch opportunities about once a month. The first of those deployments should be happening around the T plus 58-minute and 30-second mark. There's a view of the Transporter 1 payload containing all 143 spacecraft. For today's ride shares, there are 11 ports on our payload adapter responsible for sending 133 spacecraft plus our 10 Starlink satellites into orbit. Some of these ports will have multiple deployments. For these, over the countdown nets, we'll hear callouts for when the deployment sequence has begun and another callout for when the deployment sequence has completed. There are also then a handful of ports that will deploy only once, and we'll try to let you know who the customer is for each deployment, along with how many spacecraft are being sent into space. We're just over a minute away from the first set of deployments. Due to the nature of the payload stack, we will not have visuals for every deployment, but we do hope to catch most of them with our 2-camera views. It's also worth noting that we will lose access to ground station coverage for a short period during the 18-minute deployment sequence, and when we reach that point, we'll let you know over the webcast. First up, the deployment sequences for port C4 and C1 will be initiated at the T plus 58-minute and 30-second mark. On port C4, there are 36 Planet SuperDoves, and then there are 17 spacecraft aboard Kepler's port on port C1. And we're hoping to get
Ports C4 and C1 deployment sequences initiated.
those callouts. The deployment sequence has started for 36 of Planet's Super Doves on port C4, as well as the 17 spacecraft aboard Kepler's port on C1. We're expecting these deployments to conclude about 11 minutes from now. In just a few seconds, we should be starting up the deployment for our customer Maverick, which contains 3 CubeSats for NASA's Small Spacecraft Technology Program's VR-3X mission. It's going to be deploying from the aft end fuel dome, which essentially is a small platform mounted on the back end of the second stage fuel dome, right above the MVAC engine.
Aft end payload deployed.
And there you heard the callouts. 3 CubeSats aboard Maverick's Mercury dispenser have deployed. These are for NASA's Small Spacecraft Technologies Program VR-3X mission. The next callout will be to start deployment sequence for our customer NanoRacks around the T+1 hour and 8 minute mark. And while we wait for this deployment sequence to begin, we're going to leave you with views of the deployments for Planet and Kepler. And we'll see you back here at the T+1 hour and 7 minute mark.
Also signal reef expected.
Welcome back to the webcast for Transporter 1, SpaceX's first dedicated smallsat rideshare program mission. On board this mission are 143 spacecraft, the most spacecraft ever deployed on a single mission. If you're just joining us, Falcon 9 had an on-time liftoff at 10 a.m. Eastern from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. It followed a nominal trajectory after liftoff. The first stage landed for the 5th time on our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You, and our second stage had 2 successful engine burns. So far, the deployment sequence has begun for 36 of Planet's CubeSats, as well as the 17 spacecraft aboard Kepler's port. If you're looking closely at the left half of your screen, you should see them in the background being deployed from the payload. We're expecting those to be completed around the T plus 1 hour and 9-minute mark. We've also deployed 3 CubeSats for our customer Maverick. We're now waiting to hear that the deployment sequence has started from port C3 for the 9 spacecraft for NanoRac's EAR-1 mission. And while we're waiting for that call out, the white dot on the left-hand side of the screen, that is the moon. It's pretty cool shots of the moon there. And there goes another satellite. Again, we're waiting for confirmation from the team for the 9 spacecraft for NanoRac's
deployment sequence initiated.
EAR-1 mission. And there's the confirmation for the 9 spacecraft. We're expecting to get confirmation that these have completed deployment in about 8 minutes from now once we pass through our ground station blackout period, so stay tuned for that.
Also signal Bangalore as expected.
Next up, we're expecting to get the confirmation that the 36 of Planet's Super Doves have deployed, as well as the 17 spacecraft aboard Kepler's port. And we did get that call out. So far, we've successfully deployed 56 of our 133 smallsat rideshares today. 9 spacecrafts have started their deployment sequence and should wrap up in the next few minutes, leaving another 68 still yet to be initiated. We've now entered that blackout period I mentioned earlier, which means we lose camera views and telemetry. During this time, we are expecting quite a bit of activity, but we won't get confirmation of successful deployments until we regain ground station connectivity around the T plus 1 hour and 15-minute mark. Here's a preview of what will be happening until we regain that connectivity. 9 spacecraft for NanoRacks will complete their deployment sequence. The first of 2 ports for our customer ExoLaunch will start and then finish deploying from port B3. Their second port, B2, will also begin its deploy sequence, but won't be completed until approximately T plus 1 hour and 16 minutes. ExoLaunch has a total of 30 spacecraft on today's mission. From there, 2 spacecraft will deploy for our customer Capella from 2 separate ports. And lastly, Spaceflight Incorporated customer IQPS's satellite will also separate. And while we wait to regain access to ground station coverage in a few minutes, sit back and follow along with our animation that shows you where we're at in the mission. We'll see you back here at the T plus 1 hour and 15-minute mark.
We're back here at Celestis headquarters. Just a quick reminder as the deployments continue that the Horizon flight capsules are located on the Sherpa FX-1 spacecraft, which is due for deployment at around L plus 74 minutes, which is still a few minutes away. We'll let you know when it's confirmed and that your loved ones are free flying. All for now. Thanks.
Welcome back once again to the Transporter-1 mission. We're in the middle of deploying 133 small sats for commercial and government customers. We're expecting to reconnect with the ground station in just a few seconds, and we should be hearing callouts for the deployments that we didn't see, and these callouts should be happening back-to-back once we reconnect. During this blackout period, we also were able to recover both fairing halves, and they are safely on board our ships. And the callouts for the satellites should be happening around the T plus 1 hour, 15 minutes and 50-second mark.
Acquisition of signal, Cordova.
Deployments confirmed on ports C3, B3, C5, B1, and C6. Port B2 deployment sequence initiated and confirmed.
So we did get some confirmations. We should have some more callouts happening in just a few seconds here, and I'll summarize once all of the callouts are done.
Port A4 deployment confirmed. Port A2 deployment confirmed.
Keith, I need to.
All the callouts, I'm going to go ahead and recap all the different ports. So from port C3, the NanoRacks Ease 1 missions 9 payloads have deployed. From port B3 and B2, the ExoPort 1 spacecraft deployed with 2 ICE-I radar imaging satellites aboard, and ExoPort 2 with 28 spacecraft from the DLR ICE-I Nano Avionics Swarm and TU Dresden began its deployment. From port C5 and C6, deployed 1 small sat each for our customer Capella. From port B1, the Spaceflight Incorporated customer's IQPS satellite has also deployed. And from port A4, SpaceX Spaceflight Incorporated's Sherpa FX-1 spacecraft has deployed with its 13 spacecraft on board. From port B2, the final small sats for EXO launch have now deployed, making for a total of 30 on today's mission. And from port A2, D-Orbit's Pulse mission with its 20 spacecraft on board has also deployed. And that will conclude the rideshare portion of the mission. With these deployments behind us, we are now going to enter another short coast phase before deploying our 10 Starlink satellites. So sit tight, enjoy the music, and we'll be back at the T plus 1 hour and 30-minute mark. We'll see you then.
Okay, well, Sherpa is deployed. We are free flying into orbit, where we expect to spend somewhere between 4 and 7 years, depending upon solar activity, atmospheric drag, etc. This will conclude our coverage of today's Horizon flight mission. Once again, thanks to everyone involved, from SpaceX to Spaceflight to the Celestis team to Cosmic Perspective and their team. It's been a great day. We look forward to putting our tracking service in place, and thank you very much for trusting Celestis. And now we'll hear finally from Mary Liz Bender.
When you and I are ready, no longer earthly bound, we'll travel through the crystal night, starbound. Heaven holds a mystery wrapped inside a sound. Through the eyes of endless time, starbound, you and I. A floating star is what we are, suspended in space. Outward bound is the only home we've found to save the human race. Speed is now their captain. Kings that lost their crown. Motion is our master. Starbound. Star